My sister-in-law kept accidentally endangering my newborn. The baby monitor crackled to life at 2:47 a.m., and through the grainy video feed, I watched my 3-month-old daughter Emma's bassinet rock violently back and forth. My heart stopped. She was supposed to be fast asleep after her midnight feeding. I bolted upright in bed, accidentally elbowing my husband Jake awake as I scrambled for my phone's flashlight. The monitor showed Emma's tiny arms flailing, her face scrunched up in what I knew would become a full-blown scream in about 10 seconds. "What's wrong?" Jake mumbled, still half asleep. "Something's wrong with Emma," I whispered, already halfway out of bed. But as I tiptoed toward the nursery, I heard it, muffled giggling coming from downstairs. I froze. We lived alone. Just me, Jake, and Emma in our small 2-story house in suburban Portland. Jake's sister Melissa had a key for emergencies, but it was nearly 3 a.m. on a Tuesday night. The giggling got louder, followed by the unmistakable sound of our microwave beeping. Someone was in our kitchen. I crept back to wake Jake properly this time, shaking his shoulder until his eyes opened. "There's someone downstairs," I hissed. "And Emma's crying." Jake sat up immediately, suddenly alert. We both listened. Emma's wails were getting more intense, and now there was definitely movement in the kitchen below us. Footsteps on our creaky hardwood floors. "Stay here," Jake whispered, reaching for the baseball bat he kept beside the bed. Like hell, I shot back, grabbing my phone to call 911. But before I could dial, a familiar voice drifted up the stairs. "Jake? Sarah? Sorry, I hope I didn't wake you guys." "Melissa." Jake and I looked at each other in complete bewilderment. "Mel," he called down. "What are you doing here?" "Oh good, you're up. I brought late-night snacks. I couldn't sleep and thought you might be hungry with the baby keeping you awake and all." Emma's crying intensified, and I couldn't stand it anymore. I rushed to the nursery and found her exactly as the monitor had shown, red-faced and furious, but apparently unharmed. As I lifted her from the bassinet, checking her over frantically, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The safety strap that secured her swaddle blanket was undone. Completely undone. Which meant someone had been in here, had touched my sleeping baby, and had somehow messed with her swaddle badly enough to make her uncomfortable and wake her up. "Melissa." I called downstairs, trying to keep my voice level as I reswaddled Emma. "Were you up here?" "Oh yeah. I peeked in on the little princess when I got here. She looked so peaceful, but her blankie seemed too tight, so I loosened it up for her. You know, so she could breathe better." My hand started shaking as Emma finally began to calm down in my arms. Melissa had let herself into our house at 3 a.m., crept into our baby's room while we slept, and adjusted Emma's swaddle. The swaddle that our pediatrician had specifically shown us how to do safely. The swaddle that was designed to be snug. Jake appeared in the doorway, looking as confused as I felt. "Mel says she brought us food," he said quietly. From downstairs, Melissa's cheerful voice continued, "I made loaded nachos. With extra jalapenos, just how you like them, Jake. And I warmed up some of that leftover Thai curry from your fridge. The spicy one looked so good." I stared at Jake in horror. "She heated up the Thai curry? The one with peanut sauce?" My voice came out as a strangled whisper. Jake's face went pale. We'd specifically told Melissa 3 weeks ago that I couldn't eat anything with peanuts while breastfeeding because Emma had shown signs of a possible allergy during her 2-month checkup. Dr. Martinez had been very clear, even trace amounts in breast milk could trigger a reaction in sensitive babies. "Maybe she forgot," Jake said weakly, but I could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. Emma had finally settled against my chest, her tiny fist curled around my finger. I looked down at her perfect little face and felt a surge of protective fury that surprised me with its intensity. "Jake, she let herself into our house at 3 in the morning, went into our baby's room without permission, and messed with Emma's swaddle," I said, my voice getting steadier and angrier with each word. "And now she's trying to feed me food that could make our daughter sick. This isn't normal." From downstairs, pots and pans clanged loudly. "Sorry," Melissa called up. "Just making myself at home." Oh, and I moved Emma's car seat to the kitchen table. It was blocking the hallway and someone could trip over it. My stomach dropped. "The car seat was by the front door where we always keep it," I told Jake. It wasn't blocking anything. We both rushed downstairs, Emma still in my arms. The sight that greeted us made me want to scream. Melissa had indeed moved Emma's car seat, and apparently dropped it in the process. It lay on its side next to our kitchen table, the safety harness tangled and twisted. The base was still by the front door, but the actual seat had been completely detached. "Oh, that thing is so heavy." Melissa laughed, stirring something aromatic and spicy smelling on our stove. She was wearing what looked like my nursing pajamas, the expensive ones Jake had bought me for the hospital. I thought it would be easier to carry if I took it apart, but wow, those clips are tricky. She'd taken apart Emma's car seat. The car seat that had taken Jake and me 45 minutes and 3 YouTube videos to install correctly when we brought Emma home from the hospital. "Melissa." My voice came out deadly calm. "Why did you need to move the car seat at all?" "Oh. I almost forgot the best part." She clapped her hands together excitedly, apparently oblivious to the tension radiating from both Jake and me. "I'm taking Emma to the park tomorrow morning." "Well, this morning, I guess. The sunrise at Laurelhurst is supposed to be gorgeous, and I thought she should experience it. Babies need fresh air, right? And you two look exhausted." "She's 3 months old," I said slowly. "It's October. Sunrise tomorrow is at 7:23 a.m., and it's going to be 42 degrees. Exactly. Perfect weather for a little adventure." I already packed her diaper bag with some extra clothes I found in her dresser. The cute pink outfit with the shorts will be perfect. Shorts. In 42-degree weather. For a 3-month-old baby. I looked at Jake, waiting for him to say something, anything, to acknowledge how completely wrong this entire situation was. Instead, he ran his hand through his hair and sighed. "Mel, that's really sweet of you, but maybe we should plan these things ahead of time." "Sweet." He called this sweet. Emma stirred in my arms, and I realized my hands were shaking again. But this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from rage. "Sweet?" I repeated, staring at my husband in disbelief. Jake, she broke into our house at 3 in the morning, dismantled our baby's car seat, and wants to take Emma outside in shorts when it's barely above freezing. Melissa laughed from the kitchen, completely missing the tension in my voice. Oh, Sarah, you're such a warrior. Babies are tougher than you think. My friend Chloe takes her 6-month-old camping all the time. She gestured with a wooden spoon, flinging drops of peanut curry across our counter. Besides, I didn't break in, I have a key. For emergencies, Jake said quietly. The key is for emergencies, Mel. This is an emergency. You guys clearly need sleep. When's the last time you had a proper date night? She beamed at us like she'd solved world hunger. I'm being helpful. I bounced Emma gently as she began to fuss again, probably picking up on my stress. Melissa, what you're describing isn't helping. Taking a 3-month-old to a park at sunrise in October could make her sick. And you can't just take apart her car seat. If it's not installed correctly, she could be seriously injured. Oh please, how hard can it be? It's just clips and straps. Melissa turned back to the stove, dismissing my concerns with a wave. You new moms are so paranoid about everything. My neighbor's daughter has 4 kids and she says the first one turns you crazy with worry. The smell of peanut curry was getting stronger, making my stomach churn. I'd been looking forward to eating again without restrictions, but now the thought of accidentally exposing Emma to allergens made me nauseous. Speaking of paranoid, Melissa continued, I threw out some of those bottles in Emma's bag. The ones with the dates written on them? Some of them were from yesterday, which is obviously expired. You can't feed a baby old milk. My blood went cold. What bottles? The ones in the diaper bag? Yeah, there were like 6 of them. I dumped them down the sink, you're welcome. She looked proud of herself. I know how busy you are, so I figured I'd help clean up. Those weren't expired bottles. Those were my carefully pumped and stored breast milk reserves, 6 bottles representing hours of work, stored properly and dated for freshness tracking. Liquid gold that I'd been saving for exactly this kind of unexpected situation. Melissa, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, breast milk doesn't expire after 1 day. Those dates were so we use the oldest milk first. You just threw away about 24 ounces of pumped milk. Her face fell slightly. Oh. Well, I mean, better safe than sorry, right? Jake stepped forward. Mel, Sarah spends hours pumping that milk. You can't just throw it away. I was trying to help. Her voice got defensive, higher pitched. God, you guys are acting like I committed a crime. I came here to do something nice, and you're both treating me like some kind of monster. Emma started crying again, louder this time, and I realized I'd been unconsciously tightening my grip on her as my anger built. I forced myself to relax, swaying gently to calm her. Nobody's calling you a monster, Jake said, though his voice lacked conviction. It's just, maybe text us next time before coming over? Especially this late? Fine, Melissa snapped, turning off the burner with more force than necessary. I guess I'll just take my help elsewhere. But don't come crying to me when you're both exhausted and overwhelmed. She grabbed her purse from the counter, then paused at the door. Oh, and I already called Mom and told her about the Sunrise Park plan. She's so excited to see the pictures. The front door slammed behind her, leaving Jake and me staring at each other in the sudden silence. Emma's cries echoed through the house, mixing with the lingering smell of peanut curry and my growing certainty that this was only the beginning. The next morning, my phone started buzzing at 6:15 a.m. Still groggy from Emma's 4 a.m. feeding, I grabbed it expecting to see Jake's alarm going off early for work. Instead, I found 7 missed calls from Jake's mom, Patricia. My stomach dropped. Melissa had mentioned calling her mother about the Sunrise Park plan. I was still in my robe, Emma finally sleeping peacefully in her bouncer, when Patricia's silver Honda pulled into our driveway. Through the living room window, I watched her march up to our front door with the determined stride of a woman on a mission. The doorbell rang 3 times in quick succession. Sarah, honey, it's Pat. We need to talk. Jake appeared at the top of the stairs, hair sticking up, toothbrush hanging from his mouth. Is that my mom? I opened the door to find Patricia holding a large canvas tote bag and wearing the kind of concerned expression usually reserved for natural disasters. She brushed past me without waiting for an invitation. Where's my granddaughter? She asked, scanning the room until she spotted Emma. Oh, thank goodness she's safe. Safe? I repeated, closing the door. Pat, what did Melissa tell you? Patricia set her bag down with a heavy thud and turned to face me, her expression grave. She told me you and Jake had some kind of breakdown last night. That you were screaming at her for trying to help with the baby, and that you become so paranoid and controlling that you won't let anyone else care for Emma. The words hit me like a physical blow. That's not what happened. She was crying, Sarah. Absolutely sobbing on the phone at 3:30 this morning. Patricia pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages. Look at this. She says you accused her of trying to hurt the baby, and that Jake just stood there while you went crazy on her. I stared at the screen, reading Melissa's version of events. According to her texts, she'd come over with food to help exhausted new parents, only to be attacked for trying to fix Emma's dangerously tight, swaddle and clean up spoiled baby bottles that could have made Emma sick. There was no mention of her letting herself in at 3 a.m. No mention of the dismantled car seat or the plan to take Emma to a cold park in shorts. Nothing about the peanut curry or the 24 ounces of breast milk she dumped down the drain. Pat, I started, but she held up her hand. I brought supplies, she announced, opening the tote bag. Formula, bottles, proper swaddling blankets, and a baby care book that might help you understand appropriate safety measures. She pulled out a well-worn copy of What to Expect the First Year and set it on my coffee table like evidence. Melissa showed me the photos. What photos? Patricia scrolled through her phone again. The car seat, honey. Look how improperly installed it was. The base isn't even secured correctly, and the harness was all twisted up. Melissa said she found it like that and tried to fix it, but you started yelling before she could finish. The photo showed Emma's car seat exactly as we'd found it the night before, on its side next to the kitchen table, harness tangled, completely detached from its base. But Melissa had framed it as evidence of our negligence, not her interference. Jake came downstairs, now dressed but looking like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Mom, what's going on? Jacob, sit down. Patricia's voice took on the no-nonsense tone I remembered from family dinners. We need to have a serious conversation about postpartum anxiety and getting Sarah some help. Emma stirred in her bouncer, making the soft grunting sounds that meant she'd be hungry soon. I picked her up automatically, my hands shaking slightly as I realized the full scope of what Melissa had done. She hadn't just dismissed our concerns or endangered our baby. She'd crafted an entire narrative that painted me as an unstable new mother and herself as a concerned aunt trying to protect Emma from my paranoid parenting. And Jake's family was believing every word. Postpartum anxiety? I repeated, staring at Patricia in disbelief. Pat, that's not what this is about. Honey, I know it's hard to see it from the inside, Patricia said gently, settling onto our couch like she was planning to stay a while. But Melissa told me you've been obsessing over every little thing. Getting upset when she tries to help, accusing her of dangerous behavior when she's just being a loving aunt. Jake sat down heavily in his recliner, running both hands through his hair. Mom, you weren't here last night. Some of the stuff Mel did was genuinely concerning. Like what? Patricia pulled out a small notebook, the kind she used for grocery lists, and clicked her pen expectantly. Give me specifics. I looked at Jake, waiting for him to explain, but he seemed to be struggling with where to start. Emma began rooting against my shoulder, so I adjusted my robe to nurse her, trying to think clearly through my exhaustion and frustration. She let herself in at 3 a.m. without calling, I began. She went into Emma's nursery while we were sleeping and loosened her swaddle because she thought it was too tight. Patricia wrote something down. Melissa has experience with babies, Sarah. Her friend Chloe has been letting her help with her 6-month-old for months now. She took apart Emma's car seat, Jake added, sounding more confident. Completely disconnected it from the base and left it on its side. Because it was blocking the hallway, Patricia countered. She was trying to prevent someone from tripping over it. That shows good safety awareness. I felt like I was losing my mind. It wasn't blocking anything. And you can't just dismantle a car seat, they have to be installed by certified technicians or following very specific instructions. Sarah, honey. Patricia's voice took on the patient tone people use with children. Car seats aren't that complicated. I raised 3 children before they even had car seat laws, and they all survived just fine. Emma latched on, and the familiar tug brought me a moment of calm. I focused on her tiny fingers curled against my chest and tried to organize my thoughts. She heated up Thai curry with peanut sauce and wanted me to eat it, I said quietly. We specifically told her 3 weeks ago that Emma might have a peanut allergy, and that I can't have any peanuts while breastfeeding. Patricia looked up from her notebook. Are you sure you told her that? Because Melissa remembers you mentioning some foods to avoid, but she thought that was just while Emma was having those little tummy troubles. No, Pat. Dr. Martinez was very clear. Emma had a reaction during her 2-month appointment, and we told everyone in the family. I looked at Jake for support. You were there when we called your mom and dad, remember? The night after the appointment? Jake nodded slowly. Yeah, we definitely told everyone. I specifically remember calling Mel because she'd been asking about bringing food over. Well, maybe there was some miscommunication, Patricia said, but I caught a flicker of uncertainty in her voice. These things happen with new parents, there's so much information flying around. My phone buzzed with a text message. Then another. And another. Excuse me for a second, I murmured, shifting Emma to check the screen. The first message was from Jake's older brother David, *, mom called. Heard you're having a rough time. Here if you need anything, *. The second was from Jake's cousin Rachel, *, just talked to Melissa. So sorry you're struggling. Postpartum is so hard. Have you talked to your doctor, *? The third was from someone I didn't recognize, *, this is Chloe, Melissa's friend. She asked me to reach out. I went through severe postpartum anxiety with my first baby. Happy to share resources that helped me, *. I scrolled up and saw there were 6 more messages I'd missed while dealing with Patricia. Word was spreading through Jake's entire extended family that I was having some kind of mental health crisis. Sarah? Patricia was watching me with concern. What's wrong? You look pale. I held up my phone with trembling hands. Melissa told everyone I'm having postpartum anxiety. Look at these messages. Jake leaned over to see the screen, and his face darkened as he read. Jesus, Mel. She called everyone. Well, she's worried about you both, Patricia said defensively. And honestly, looking at these messages, it sounds like people care and want to help. That's a good thing. Another text came through, this one from Jake's dad, *, son, your mother filled me in. We're here for whatever you need. Don't be too proud to accept help with Sarah and the baby, *. Emma pulled away from nursing and let out a small burp. As I adjusted my robe and lifted her to my shoulder for burping, I caught sight of our reflection in the dark TV screen, a tired woman in a milk-stained robe, holding her baby while her mother-in-law took notes about her supposed mental state. Maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe sleep deprivation and new mom hormones were making me see threats where none existed. Maybe Melissa really was just trying to help, and I was too paranoid and controlling to accept it gracefully. But then I remembered the feeling of Emma's loose swaddle at 3 a.m., the 24 ounces of breast milk swirling down the drain, and the plan to take my 3-month-old baby to a cold park in shorts. No. I wasn't crazy. I was just outnumbered. 3 days later, Emma spiked a fever. It started at 101.2 degrees at 2 p.m. on Friday afternoon. By the time we got to Dr. Martinez's office, it had climbed to 101.8, and Emma was listless in a way that made my chest tight with panic. Has she been exposed to anyone sick recently? Dr. Martinez asked, carefully examining Emma's ears and throat while I held her tiny, too warm body still. Any visitors? Changes in routine? I started to explain about Melissa's 3 a.m. visit, but Jake cut me off. My sister came by earlier this week. She might have been fighting something off. Dr. Martinez nodded, making notes. Fever in infants this young is always concerning. I want to run some tests, but first, talk me through everything that's happened since her last visit. I found myself editing the story as I spoke, hyper-aware of how crazy I'd sound if I mentioned the car seat incident or the thrown-away breast milk. Instead, I focused on the medical facts, possible exposure, the timeline of symptoms, Emma's eating and sleeping patterns. But as Dr. Martinez examined Emma more thoroughly, she asked the question I'd been dreading. Sarah, how are you doing? Any concerns about postpartum anxiety or depression? The question hit differently coming from our pediatrician. Not accusatory like Patricia's intervention, but genuinely caring. Still, I felt Jake tense beside me. I'm okay, I said carefully. Tired, but okay. It's just that your mother-in-law called yesterday, Dr. Martinez continued gently. She mentioned some family concerns about your stress levels and wanted to make sure we were monitoring your mental health as closely as Emma's physical health. My face flushed hot. Patricia had called our pediatrician. She'd actually called Emma's doctor to report her concerns about my mental state. What exactly did she say? Jake asked, and I could hear the edge creeping into his voice. Nothing specific, just that family members had noticed increased anxiety around the baby's care, and she wanted to make sure you both had support. Dr. Martinez looked between us carefully. These conversations happen more often than you'd think. Extended family sometimes struggles to know how to help new parents. Emma whimpered and turned her face into my chest. Her little body felt like a furnace against my skin. Dr. Martinez, I said slowly, hypothetically, if someone loosened a 3-month-old swaddle because they thought it was too tight, could that cause temperature regulation issues? Possibly. Proper swaddling is important for maintaining body temperature in young infants. She looked at me more intently. Did someone adjust Emma's swaddle recently? I explained about Melissa's nighttime visit, watching Dr. Martinez's expression grow more serious as I described the loosened swaddle and Emma's distress when we found her. And this person isn't trained in infant care? Dr. Martinez asked. She's helped her friend with a 6-month-old, Jake said, but his voice lacked conviction. Dr. Martinez set down her stethoscope. Jake, Sarah, I need to be clear about something. 3-month-olds have very different needs than 6-month-olds. What's safe for an older baby can be dangerous for Emma. And entering a home at night to adjust a sleeping infant's clothing or bedding. She paused, choosing her words carefully. That would concern me as a medical professional. Emma's fever broke that evening at 102.1 degrees, and Dr. Martinez recommended a trip to the emergency room for additional monitoring. As we sat in the sterile waiting room at 11 p.m., Emma finally sleeping fitfully in my arms after a dose of acetaminophen, Jake's phone started buzzing. It's Mel, he said, declining the call. She's been trying to reach me all afternoon. The phone buzzed again immediately. Then again. Finally, Jake answered. Mel, we're at the hospital with Emma. Now's not a good time. I could hear Melissa's voice through the phone, high-pitched and rapid, but couldn't make out the words. Jake's face went through a series of expressions, confusion, disbelief, and finally anger. What do you mean, you think you know why she's sick? He asked. More rapid talking from Melissa's end. No, Mel. Absolutely not. We'll call you tomorrow. He hung up and stared at his phone for a long moment. What did she say? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. She said she's been doing research online, and she thinks Emma's fever might be because you're overfeeding her. Something about breast milk being too rich and causing inflammation. Jake's voice was flat, exhausted. She wants to come to the hospital to talk to the doctors about switching Emma to formula. I looked down at my daughter's flushed cheeks and felt something shift inside me, like a door slamming shut. Emma stirred slightly, her tiny fingers gripping my shirt, and I made a decision that felt both terrifying and inevitable. Jake, when we get home tomorrow, I'm changing the locks. Jake stared at me across the hospital waiting room like I'd just suggested we flee the country. Emma had finally settled into a deeper sleep against my chest, her fever down to 100.3 degrees, but the fluorescent lights made her skin look pale and fragile. Change the locks, he repeated quietly. Sarah, she's my sister. Your sister who thinks she knows better than our pediatrician. Your sister who your mother called Dr. Martinez about because apparently I'm having a mental breakdown. I adjusted Emma's hospital blanket, trying to keep my voice steady. Your sister who wants to march into this ER and tell the doctors that breast milk is making our baby sick. A nurse called another family back to see their child, and the waiting room felt even emptier than before. Jake rubbed his temples with both hands. Look, I know Mel can be, a lot. But changing the locks feels extreme. She's never actually hurt Emma. Yet, I said. She's never actually hurt Emma yet. Before Jake could respond, his phone lit up with another call. This time it was Patricia. Don't answer it, I said, but he was already swiping to accept. Hey Mom. Yeah, we're still at the hospital. What do you mean, what did we do to her? I could hear Patricia's voice through the speaker, sharp with accusation. Jake pulled the phone away from his ear and put it on speaker so I could hear properly. Completely hysterical when she called me, Jacob. She said Sarah screamed at her for trying to help with medical advice, and that you told her she wasn't welcome around Emma anymore. Mom, that's not what happened, Jake started, but Patricia steamrolled over him. She's at my house right now, crying her eyes out. She feels like you've turned against the whole family just because Sarah doesn't want help from anyone. Do you have any idea how much this is hurting her? I felt Emma's breathing change against my chest, the slightly deeper rhythm that meant she was falling into real sleep. The fever reducer was working, and for the first time in hours, I felt like I could breathe normally. Patricia, I said, loud enough for the phone to pick up my voice. Melissa told you I screamed at her for giving medical advice? Well, yes. She said you completely lost it when she mentioned the overfeeding issue. We never spoke to Melissa tonight. She left those messages on Jake's voicemail while we've been sitting in this hospital waiting room for the past 4 hours. Silence on the other end of the line. Long enough that Jake checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. That can't be right, Patricia said finally. She said she talked to both of you. Jake and I looked at each other. He pulled up his call log and scrolled through it. Mom, I have 3 missed calls from Mel, all within 20 minutes of each other. I called her back once, we talked for maybe 90 seconds, and I hung up. There's no record of any other conversation. But she said. Patricia's voice trailed off. Emma shifted in my arms, making a small sound of contentment. Her fever was definitely dropping. I could feel the difference in her body temperature already. What exactly did she tell you happened? I asked. Another pause. She said she called to check on Emma, and you answered Jake's phone and started yelling about how she was interfering with medical care. She said you told her the family was ganging up on you and that she needed to stop giving parenting advice. I closed my eyes, feeling exhaustion wash over me like a wave. Patricia, I never answered Jake's phone. I never spoke to Melissa at all today. Then why would she? Patricia's voice got smaller. Why would she say that? Jake was staring at his phone screen, scrolling through something. Mom, I need to call you back. Jacob, wait. He hung up and turned the screen toward me. Look at this. It was Melissa's Facebook page, posted 27 minutes ago, * heartbroken tonight. Sometimes loving someone means accepting when they're not ready for help. Praying for my sweet niece and hoping her parents find peace. Family isn't always easy. Red heart #aunt like #prayers needed *. The post already had 14 likes and 6 comments, including one from Jake's cousin Rachel, * you're such a good sister and aunt. Some people don't realize how lucky they are to have family who cares *. She posted this while we were sitting in the ER, I said slowly. While Emma had a 102-degree fever, Melissa was on Facebook posting about what a victim she is. Jake's jaw tightened as he read through the comments. His uncle Mike had written, * always here for you, kiddo. New parents can be tough to deal with sometimes *. 27 minutes ago was right after I hung up on her, Jake said. She called Mom immediately after this post went live. My phone buzzed with a text from my own mother, * honey, I saw Melissa's Facebook post. Is everything okay? Call me when you can *. Then another from my sister, * what's going on with Jake's family? Melissa's post is pretty passive-aggressive *. I showed Jake the messages. It's not just her family anymore. She's making this public. A doctor finally called Emma's name, and we followed her back to a small examination room. As she checked Emma's temperature, now down to 99.8 degrees, and listened to her lungs, I found myself watching Jake instead of focusing on the medical assessment. He was scrolling through his phone with increasing agitation, his face getting redder with each swipe. By the time the doctor finished explaining that Emma's fever was likely just a minor viral infection that would resolve on its own, Jake looked like he was ready to throw his phone across the room. Everything looks good, the doctor said. Keep monitoring her temperature, continue the acetaminophen as needed, and call if the fever goes above 101 or if she shows any signs of respiratory distress. As we gathered our things to leave, Jake held up his phone one more time. Sarah, he said quietly. Mel just posted again. The new post was a photo, a screenshot of a text conversation. I could make out parts of it, *, told her she wasn't welcome. Sarah won't let anyone help, afraid for Emma's safety, *. Those aren't real texts, I whispered, staring at the image. Jake, those are fake. Look at the timestamps, they're from tonight, but the conversation she's showing never happened. Jake was already dialing his phone. Mom? Yeah, we need to talk. All of us. Tonight. As we walked out of the hospital into the cold October air, Emma sleeping peacefully in her car seat, I realized that changing the locks wasn't going to be enough. Melissa wasn't just careless or overeager to help. She was dangerous in a way I was only beginning to understand. Patricia's silver Honda was already in our driveway when we pulled up at 12:47 a.m., along with David's black pickup truck. Through our living room window, I could see figures moving around inside our house. How did they get in? I asked, my exhaustion instantly replaced by a surge of adrenaline. Jake parked behind his mother's car and turned off the engine. Mel still has her key, remember? Emma stirred in her car seat as we sat in our own driveway, staring at our own house full of Jake's family members who had apparently decided to stage some kind of intervention while we were at the hospital with our sick baby. Jake, I can't do this tonight, I said quietly. Emma just got out of the ER, it's almost 1 a.m., and I haven't slept more than 3 hours straight in 4 days. I know, but if we don't deal with this now, it's just going to get worse. He reached over and squeezed my hand. Besides, maybe it's better this way. Everyone together, everything out in the open. As we approached the front door, I could hear voices inside, Patricia's measured tone, David's deeper voice, and underneath it all, Melissa's familiar laugh. They were having a perfectly pleasant family gathering in our living room while we'd been sitting in a hospital waiting room. Jake used his key to open our own front door, and the conversation stopped abruptly. Patricia, David, his wife Jennifer, and Melissa were all clustered around our coffee table with mugs of coffee and what looked like a plate of cookies. Like a book club meeting. Oh good, you're home. Patricia stood up immediately, reaching for Emma's carrier. How's our little patient? I instinctively pulled the carrier closer to me. She's fine. Viral fever, should be better in a day or 2. Thank God, Melissa said, setting down her coffee mug. I was so worried when I heard she was in the hospital. I've been researching infant fevers online for hours. David cleared his throat. We thought it might be good to all sit down together and clear the air. Some things have been said tonight that don't make sense. Jake closed the door behind us and leaned against it. Yeah, like fake text message screenshots on Facebook. Melissa's face went pale. What do you mean, fake? I mean the conversation you posted never happened, Mel. I have my phone records right here. Jake pulled out his phone and opened his call log. Want to explain to everyone how we supposedly had a screaming match when you never actually talked to Sarah at all? Jennifer shifted uncomfortably on our couch. Maybe there was some confusion about the timing. There's no confusion, I interrupted, finally setting Emma's carrier down but keeping it within arm's reach. Melissa has been lying. Not just tonight, but for weeks. Sarah, that's a very serious accusation, Patricia said, her voice taking on that careful tone again. Melissa showed us the Facebook comments from people supporting her. Why would strangers lie? I stared at her in disbelief. Patricia, those people don't know what actually happened. They're responding to Melissa's version of events, which isn't true. Melissa stood up abruptly, tears starting to form in her eyes. I can't believe you're doing this. I came here tonight because I was worried about you, Sarah. Everyone's worried about you. Worried about what, exactly? Jake asked, crossing his arms. The paranoia. The way you're isolating yourself and Emma from family. The way you're seeing threats everywhere. Melissa gestured toward Patricia and David. Ask them, I'm not the only one who's noticed. David cleared his throat again. Look, we're all tired, and emotions are running high. Maybe we should table this until. No. The word came out sharper than I intended, but I was done with diplomatic solutions. We're not tabling this. Melissa, tell everyone what really happened Tuesday night. Tell them exactly what you did. Melissa's tears were flowing freely now. I brought you food and tried to help with the baby. I fixed her swaddle because it looked too tight, and I cleaned up some old bottles that could have made her sick. I was being helpful, and you made me feel like a criminal. You let yourself into our house at 3 a.m. without permission, I said, my voice getting steadier. You dismantled Emma's car seat and left it on the floor. You threw away 24 ounces of pumped breast milk because you decided it was expired after one day. That's not, Melissa started, but Jake cut her off. And tonight you posted fake screenshots of a conversation that never happened, then called Mom crying about how we attacked you while we were sitting in a hospital waiting room. Patricia looked back and forth between her children, confusion creeping across her face. Melissa, is that true? About the screenshots? For a moment, Melissa just stood there, tears streaming down her cheeks. Then something in her expression shifted, a flicker of anger replacing the hurt. You know what? Fine. Yes, I made up those texts. But only because nobody would listen to the real problem otherwise. She turned to face Patricia directly. Mom, Sarah is not okay. She's keeping Emma away from family, she's paranoid about everything, and Jake's too scared of her reactions to speak up. The room went completely silent except for the sound of Emma breathing softly in her carrier. Then Patricia asked the question that changed everything. Melissa, honey, what real problem? The silence stretched on for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Emma made a soft, cooing sound from her carrier, and I realized everyone in the room was staring at Melissa, waiting for her answer. The real problem, Melissa said slowly, wiping her eyes, is that Sarah had severe postpartum depression with Emma, and she's been hiding it from everyone. Including Jake. My blood went cold. That's not true. She told me herself, 2 weeks after Emma was born. Melissa's voice gained confidence as she spoke. She called me crying, saying she was having thoughts about hurting the baby, that she couldn't handle being a mother. She made me promise not to tell anyone, but I've been trying to help ever since. Jake turned to stare at me, his face a mixture of confusion and concern. Sarah? Did you call Mel? No. The word came out louder than I intended, causing Emma to startle slightly in her carrier. Jake, I never called her. I never said any of that. But I could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. The same doubt I'd seen from Patricia, from Dr. Martinez when she asked about postpartum anxiety, from everyone who'd been receiving Melissa's carefully crafted version of events. David leaned forward on the couch. Sarah, there's no shame in postpartum depression. Jenny went through it with our first. I'm not having postpartum depression, I said firmly. And I certainly never told Melissa I was having thoughts about hurting Emma. Melissa pulled out her phone. I saved the voicemail, she said quietly. From that night you called. I kept it because I was so worried about you. She tapped the screen, and suddenly my own voice filled our living room. Asterisk Melissa, it's Sarah. I don't know what I'm doing. Emma won't stop crying, and Jake's at work, and I can't do this. I feel like I'm going crazy. Sometimes I look at her and I just want to. I can't be the mother she needs. I'm so scared I'm going to mess this up. Can you call me back? Asterisk. The message ended, and everyone in the room was looking at me with expressions ranging from pity to concern. Jake's face had gone completely white. You see? Melissa said gently. This is why I've been trying so hard to help. Sarah, you trusted me with this, and I've been keeping your secret while trying to make sure Emma stays safe. I stared at the phone, my mind racing. The voice was definitely mine, my inflection, my speech patterns, even the way I said Emma's name. But I had absolutely no memory of making that call. When was this recorded? Jake asked quietly. Melissa checked her phone. September 18th. A Tuesday night. You were working late at the Morrison project. Jake nodded slowly. September 18th had been a brutal night. Emma had cried for 4 straight hours with what we later realized was gas pain, and I'd been alone with her until nearly midnight when Jake finally got home. I remembered feeling overwhelmed and desperate, but I didn't remember calling anyone. Sarah, Patricia said softly, honey, do you remember making this call? I opened my mouth to say no, but suddenly I wasn't sure. Those early weeks were such a blur of sleeplessness and hormonal chaos. What if I had called Melissa and blocked it out? What if the sleep deprivation had been worse than I thought? I started, then stopped. Because even if I had made that call, even if I had reached out for help during a moment of overwhelming new mom panic, that didn't explain everything else. Melissa, I said slowly, even if I did call you that night, and I honestly don't remember, that doesn't justify taking apart Emma's car seat, or throwing away my breast milk, or letting yourself into our house at 3 a.m. I was trying to help someone who told me she was afraid of hurting her baby, Melissa replied. When you called me crying about wanting to, well, you heard the message. I've been walking on eggshells ever since, trying to support Emma's safety without making you feel attacked. Jennifer shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should talk about getting Sarah some professional support. There are really good therapists who specialize in postpartum issues. Emma chose that moment to wake up fully, letting out a small cry that quickly escalated to full-blown hunger wails. I unstrapped her from the carrier automatically, my body responding to her needs even as my mind reeled from what I'd just heard. As I settled into our recliner to nurse her, I caught sight of Jake's expression. He was staring at me like he was seeing a stranger, like 3 months of marriage and new parenthood had suddenly become a question mark. And in that moment, I realized Melissa had won. Even if the voicemail was real, even if I had called her in a moment of desperation I couldn't remember, she had used it to build a narrative that made everything else she'd done seem justified. Worse, she'd made me doubt myself. But as Emma latched on and her cries immediately settled into contented silence, one thing became crystal clear: whatever was happening with my memory, whatever postpartum struggles I might be having, my instincts about keeping Emma safe were absolutely correct. The question was whether anyone else in this room would believe me. The room stayed silent except for Emma's soft nursing sounds and the tick of our wall clock. I could feel everyone watching me, waiting for some kind of breakdown or confession that would prove Melissa's narrative. Instead, I pulled out my own phone. Melissa, I said quietly, if I called you on September 18th crying about hurting Emma, why didn't you call Jake immediately? Why didn't you call my doctor, or suggest I get help right then? She blinked, clearly not expecting the question. I didn't want to betray your trust. You specifically asked me not to tell anyone. But you thought I was a danger to my baby. I kept my voice level, clinical. You just told everyone that you've been worried about Emma's safety for weeks. What kind of person hears a new mother say she wants to hurt her child and then, what? Decides to handle it alone by rearranging car seats? Patricia frowned. Sarah has a point, Melissa. If you were truly concerned about the baby's welfare. I was being supportive. Melissa's voice cracked. I was trying to help without making Sarah feel judged. That's what you're supposed to do. I scrolled through my phone's call history, going back to mid-September. Jake, what time did you get home on September 18th? He pulled out his own phone, checking his work calendar. Looks like I logged out at 11:43 p.m. So probably home by midnight, maybe 12:15. Melissa, what time did I supposedly call you? She hesitated, checking her phone again. 11:52 p.m. I turned my phone screen toward Jake. Look at my call log for that night. His eyes scanned the data, and I watched his expression change. Sarah, you called your mom at 8:17 p.m. for 14 minutes. You called the pediatrician's after-hours line at 9:33 p.m. for 6 minutes. You called me at 10:45 p.m. for 3 minutes. He looked up at Melissa. There's no call to you at 11:52 or any other time that day. David leaned forward. Maybe she used the house phone? We don't have a landline, Jake said slowly. Haven't had one since college. Melissa's face was cycling through emotions, panic, anger, calculation. Maybe it was a different night. Those early weeks all blur together, right, Sarah? You know how confused you were. But I was already ahead of her. Emma, show them the metadata on that voicemail. When was it actually recorded? I don't know how to do that technical stuff, Melissa said quickly. Jennifer, who worked in IT, held out her hand. I can check. May I? Melissa clutched her phone to her chest. That's private medical information. No, Jake said, standing up. That's evidence. Jennifer, can you tell if an audio file has been edited or manipulated? Sometimes. There are usually digital fingerprints if someone splices recordings together or uses voice synthesis software. The color drained from Melissa's face. Voice synthesis? That's ridiculous. Why would I need to fake anything? Patricia was staring at her daughter with growing alarm. Melissa, just let Jennifer look at the phone. If the recording is real, it'll prove your point. I don't have to prove anything. Melissa jumped up from the couch. Sarah admitted she doesn't remember that night clearly. She's been having memory issues for weeks. Ask her about the incident with Emma's bath water temperature, or the time she couldn't remember if she'd fed Emma or not. My stomach clenched. Those incidents had happened, but I'd never told anyone about them except. I mentioned those things to you in confidence, I said slowly, when I was worried about normal new mom brain fog. You're using my private concerns as evidence that I'm unstable. Because you are unstable. Melissa's composure finally cracked completely. You're so paranoid you think everyone's out to get you. You won't let anyone help with Emma, you've turned Jake against his own family, and now you're making up conspiracy theories about fake recordings. Emma pulled away from nursing and let out a small cry of distress. She could feel my tension, my heart rate elevating as the full scope of Melissa's manipulation became clear. The recording is fake, I said with absolute certainty. And Jennifer's going to prove it. Melissa looked around the room, at her mother's confused face, at David and Jennifer's growing suspicion, at Jake's dawning realization. Then she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I don't have to listen to this. Sarah, when you're ready to admit you need help, call me. Until then, I'm done trying to save you from yourself. She slammed the door so hard that Emma startled and began crying in earnest. As I soothed her, Jake turned to his family with an expression I'd never seen before, cold, furious, and absolutely done. Get out, he said quietly. All of you. And Mom? Don't call us until you're ready to apologize. The next morning, Jake was gone when I woke up. Emma had slept surprisingly well after all the chaos, 5 straight hours, which felt like a miracle. But Jake's side of the bed was cold, and I could hear the shower running in our ensuite bathroom. The digital clock read 6:23 a.m., which meant he was getting ready for work nearly 2 hours earlier than usual. I found him in the kitchen, fully dressed in his navy suit, gulping coffee like his life depended on it. His laptop was open on the counter, showing what looked like email drafts. You're leaving early, I said, adjusting my robe as Emma stirred against my shoulder. Morrison project meeting moved up. He didn't look at me when he spoke. Probably won't be home until late. I watched him close the laptop and shove it into his messenger bag with more force than necessary. Jake, we need to talk about last night. Do we? He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there made my stomach drop. Because honestly, Sarah, I don't know what to believe anymore. Emma made a soft cooing sound, and I bounced her gently while trying to process the distance I heard in my husband's voice. What do you mean? Jake set down his coffee mug and leaned against the counter, suddenly looking exhausted. The voicemail thing was clearly fake, Jennifer proved that. But some of what Mel said. He ran his hand through his hair. You have been really anxious about everything. You do get upset when people try to help with Emma. And those memory issues she mentioned, those are real, right? Jake, those are normal new parent things. Sleep deprivation, hormonal changes. Are they? He pulled out his phone and scrolled through something. Because I did some research last night after everyone left. Postpartum anxiety affects up to 20% of new mothers. Memory problems, intrusive thoughts, hypervigilance about the baby's safety, it's all textbook. I stared at him in disbelief. So you think Melissa's right? That I'm having some kind of breakdown? I think maybe you should talk to someone. Dr. Chen referred plenty of patients to postpartum specialists when I was doing my residency rotations. He checked his watch. There's a clinic downtown that takes our insurance. The casual way he said it, like he'd already researched treatment options, already decided I needed professional help, felt like a betrayal almost as sharp as Melissa's manipulation. Jake, I'm not having postpartum depression or anxiety. I'm having a completely rational response to your sister's concerning behavior. Emma began fussing, picking up on my rising stress levels. The fake voicemail proves she's been lying about everything. It proves she lied about one thing, Jake corrected. But that doesn't mean everything else is made up. Maybe she was genuinely worried about you and handled it wrong. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed with a text. Then another. Then 3 more in rapid succession. Jesus, he muttered, checking the screen. It's my whole family. Mom, Dad, David, even Aunt Carol. He scrolled through the messages, his expression getting grimmer. Mel posted something on Facebook at 5 a.m. My heart sank. What now? Jake turned his phone toward me, showing Melissa's latest post. Sometimes the hardest thing about loving someone is knowing when to step back and let professionals help. Praying for my brother and sister-in-law as they navigate this difficult time. Mental health matters. Red heart hashtag postpartum awareness hashtag family first hashtag mental health matters asterisk. The post already had 37 likes and 12 comments. I could see responses from Jake's extended family, co-workers, even some of my own friends who followed Melissa on social media. She's telling everyone I'm having a mental health crisis, I whispered, watching the likes tick higher in real time. Jake's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from his mother. Don't answer it, I said, but he was already swiping to accept. Mom, I can't really talk right now, he paused, listening. What do you mean, people are calling you? I could hear Patricia's voice through the speaker, agitated and rapid. Jake put the call on speaker so I could hear properly. 3 different people from church have reached out this morning asking if everything's okay with Sarah. Pastor Williams wants to know if you need help with meals or childcare. And Carol called saying she saw Melissa's post and wants to send information about a postpartum support group. Jake closed his eyes. Mom, Melissa's post is inappropriate. She doesn't have permission to discuss Sarah's medical information, even if. But is it true? Patricia interrupted. Is Sarah getting help? Because after last night, and seeing that voicemail, even if it was fake. Even if it was fake, what? I asked, my voice sharper than intended. Honey, Melissa didn't create your voice out of nothing. And some of the things she mentioned, the anxiety, the isolation, the memory issues, Jake, you've seen these things too, haven't you? The pause that followed felt endless. Emma had gone quiet in my arms, as if even she was waiting for Jake's answer. We're handling it, he said finally. Sarah's going to talk to someone. The words hit me like a physical blow. He just confirmed to his mother, and by extension, the entire family network, that I needed professional help. That Melissa's concerns had merit. Oh, thank God, Patricia breathed. Jake, we're all here to support you both. Don't try to handle this alone. After Jake hung up, we stood in our kitchen in complete silence. Emma had fallen back asleep against my chest, her tiny body warm and trusting, while my marriage felt like it was cracking apart around us. I have an appointment with Dr. Chen at 9, Jake said quietly, not meeting my eyes. I'm going to ask for a referral. For me. For both of us. Couples counseling, postpartum support, whatever we need. He grabbed his keys from the counter. Sarah, I love you. But something's not right here, and I can't figure out what's real anymore. The front door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone with Emma and the growing certainty that Melissa had won after all. Looking at my phone after Jake left, I realized I had 17 missed calls and 43 unread text messages. Word about Melissa's Facebook post had spread faster than I'd imagined possible. The first message was from my own mother at 6:47 a.m. Asterisk sweetheart, just saw Melissa's post. Why didn't you tell me you were struggling? Coming over this morning asterisk. My sister Amy at 7:02 a.m. asterisk Sarah, what the hell is happening? Jake's sister is posting about your mental health on social media? Call me now asterisk. My college roommate Jessica at 7:15 a.m. asterisk saw the Facebook drama. Are you okay? This seems really inappropriate of his family asterisk. But it was the message from my boss, Linda, that made my hands start shaking. Asterisk hi Sarah, hope you're doing well. Several people forwarded me a social media post about your situation. Let's talk about your maternity leave timeline when you're ready. No pressure. Take care of yourself asterisk. Melissa hadn't just made my supposed mental health crisis public, she potentially jeopardized my job. I was supposed to return to work in 6 weeks, and now my boss thought I was having some kind of breakdown. Emma stirred against my chest, making soft hungry sounds. As I settled into the nursery rocking chair to feed her, I tried to think clearly through my exhaustion and growing panic. My phone rang. Amy's name flashed on the screen. Sarah, thank God, my sister's voice was sharp with concern. I've been trying to reach you for an hour. What is Jake's psycho sister doing posting about your private business online? It's complicated, I said, adjusting my nursing pillow. She's been telling everyone I have postpartum depression, and now even Jake thinks. Wait, stop. Do you have postpartum depression? The directness of Amy's question caught me off guard. I don't think so. I mean, I'm tired and overwhelmed sometimes, but... Sarah, I had actual postpartum depression with Chloe. Medication, therapy, the works. This isn't that. You're dealing with your husband's nightmare family, not a chemical imbalance. Her voice got angrier. And even if you were struggling, posting about it on Facebook without permission is a massive violation. Emma pulled away from nursing and let out a satisfied burp. Through the nursery window, I could see a car pulling into our driveway. My mother's silver Camry. Amy, Mom's here. I have to. Listen to me carefully. Document everything. Screenshots, call logs, whatever you can find. If Melissa is manipulating the situation this badly, you need proof. Amy's voice took on the lawyer tone she used at work. And Sarah? Don't let them gaslight you into thinking you're crazy. Trust your instincts. By the time I got Emma changed and made it downstairs, Mom was already inside, holding a casserole dish and wearing the expression she'd had when she found out Dad was having an affair, determined and dangerous. Where's Jake? She asked, setting the dish on our counter. Work. He left early. I bounced Emma gently as she began fussing again. Mom, before you say anything. That girl is not right in the head, Mom interrupted, pulling out her phone. I've been watching her Facebook activity for the past 2 hours. Look at this. She showed me Melissa's latest comment thread. Someone had asked for more details about my situation, and Melissa had responded, *I can't share specifics due to privacy, but please keep Jake and the baby in your prayers. Sarah's been resistant to getting help, which makes everything harder for the family *. She's responding to every single comment, Mom continued, scrolling through the thread. Making herself sound like a concerned saint while painting you as an unstable mother who won't accept help. My doorbell rang 3 times in rapid succession. Through the front window, I could see Patricia's Honda again, but this time she wasn't alone. A woman I didn't recognize stood beside her, holding what looked like pamphlets. Who is that? Mom asked, peering through the window. Patricia rang the bell again, then called out, Sarah, honey, it's Pat. I brought someone I'd like you to meet. This is Dr. Rebecca Flores from the Postpartum Wellness Center. She has some information that might help. My mother's expression turned murderous. They brought a psychiatrist to your house? Without asking? Emma started crying in earnest now, overstimulated by all the chaos. As I tried to calm her, Patricia knocked on the door more insistently. Sarah, we know you're in there. Jake said you were going to get help, and we're here to support that decision. I never agreed to get help, I said quietly to my mother. Jake decided I needed it and apparently told his family I was on board. Mom marched to the front door and yanked it open with enough force to rattle the frame. Patricia Walsh, she said in a voice that could freeze lava, you have exactly 10 seconds to get off my daughter's porch before I call the police for harassment. Patricia stepped back like she'd been slapped, clutching her purse against her chest. The woman beside her, Dr. Flores, looked uncomfortable but held her ground. Mrs. Chen, I understand this is a difficult situation, Dr. Flores said diplomatically. I'm not here to diagnose anyone. Patricia simply asked me to provide some educational materials about postpartum support resources. Educational materials? Mom's voice could have cut glass. Lady, I don't know what Patricia told you, but showing up unannounced at someone's home with mental health pamphlets is not appropriate professional conduct. Emma's cries intensified, and I bounced her more frantically, trying to process what was happening. Through the chaos, I heard my phone buzzing with another call. Jake's name flashed on the screen. Sarah? His voice was tight when I answered. Mom just called. She said your mother threatened to call the police? Your mother brought a psychiatrist to our house, Jake. Without asking. Without permission. I had to raise my voice to be heard over Emma's wailing. How is that okay? Dr. Flores was speaking quietly to Patricia on the porch, and I caught fragments, not the right approach. And, needs to be voluntary. Look, I asked Mom to find some resources, Jake said. But I didn't tell her to bring anyone over. That's not what we discussed. What exactly did you discuss? I asked, finally getting Emma to calm down enough that her cries dropped to unhappy whimpers. A long pause. I called her after I left this morning. I told her I was worried about you, and that we were going to look into counseling options. You told her I was getting professional help before you even talked to me about it. Sarah, after last night, after seeing how Mel manipulated everything. I don't know what's true anymore. But the family thinks. I don't care what the family thinks. The words came out louder than intended, causing Emma to startle. Your sister posted fake evidence online, your mother brought a stranger to my house, and you're treating me like I'm having a breakdown instead of supporting me. Mom had apparently finished whatever conversation she was having with Patricia and Dr. Flores, because the front door slammed shut and she stalked back into the living room. They're gone, she announced grimly. But that doctor left her card. Said if you ever want to talk, she's available. What did Patricia say? I asked, shifting Emma to my other arm. That Melissa's been documenting concerning incidents for weeks. That she has photos of Emma's car seat installed incorrectly, timestamps showing your erratic calling patterns, and evidence that you've been isolating yourself from family support. Mom's expression darkened. She also said Jake requested the intervention because he's afraid to confront you directly. My phone was still connected to Jake's call, and I could hear him breathing on the other end. Jake? Did you hear that? I never said I was afraid of you, he said quietly. I told Mom I was worried about us. About our marriage. About how to help you without making things worse. There's nothing to make worse. I don't need help, I need my husband to believe me when I tell him his sister is lying. Emma had finally settled into that drowsy post-crying state, her tiny fist curled around my finger. Looking down at her peaceful face, I felt a surge of clarity that cut through all the chaos and manipulation. Jake, I'm going to ask you one simple question, and I need you to answer honestly. Do you trust me to keep Emma safe? The pause that followed felt like an eternity. Yes, he said finally. But Sarah, that's not really the issue. That's the only issue that matters, I interrupted. Everything else is just noise. But even as I said it, I could see Melissa's next move forming in my mind. And I realized that proving my stability was going to require something I'd been avoiding since this whole nightmare began. I was going to have to get dangerous myself. After Jake hung up, I stared at Dr. Flores' business card on my coffee table while Emma dozed in my arms. Mom was in the kitchen, aggressively washing dishes that didn't need washing, her stress response since I was a kid. I need to see Melissa's Facebook page, I said quietly. All of it. Every post, every comment, every interaction since Emma was born. Mom dried her hands and pulled out her phone. Sarah, honey, I don't think torturing yourself with. I'm not torturing myself. I'm building a case. I shifted Emma to her bouncer, where she settled with a contented sigh. Amy was right. I need documentation. As Mom scrolled through Melissa's profile, I grabbed my laptop and started creating a timeline. September 8th, Emma's birth. September 18th, the night of the allegedly fake voicemail. October 15th, the 3 a.m. break-in. Each incident carefully cataloged with dates and details. Sarah, look at this, Mom said, her voice tight. From September 23rd. She held up her phone showing a Facebook post, exhausted after spending the afternoon with my sweet niece. New parents need so much support. Sometimes being the village means making hard choices. #AntLife, #newbornlife*. September 23rd was when she first offered to babysit, I said, typing rapidly. I told her we weren't ready for overnight care yet, and she acted like I was being overprotective. Mom kept scrolling. October 2nd, worried about family dynamics lately. Prayer warriors, please send positive thoughts for wisdom in difficult situations. October 8th, sometimes loving someone means accepting their limitations while protecting the innocent. My fingers froze over the keyboard. She's been building this narrative for weeks. Every post makes her sound concerned and me sound problematic, but they're vague enough that people fill in their own assumptions. Emma stirred in her bouncer, making soft cooing sounds. As I leaned down to adjust her blanket, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake, *. Dr. Chen's office called. Appointment at 3 p.m. today for counseling referral. Can you make it, *? I stared at the message, feeling trapped between Jake's genuine concern and Melissa's manipulation. If I refused the appointment, it would look like I was resistant to help, exactly what Melissa had posted about. But going felt like admitting she was right about my mental state. What are you thinking? Mom asked, watching my face. I'm thinking Melissa's smarter than I gave her credit for. I showed her Jake's text. She's created a situation where any response I make reinforces her narrative. Cooperate with treatment, and I'm admitting I need help. Refuse, and I'm proving I'm unstable. My laptop chimed with a new email notification. The sender made my blood run cold, cps_intake@county.gov. With shaking hands, I opened the message, *Ms. Walsh, we have received a report regarding the welfare of Emma Walsh, DOB, September 8, 2024. A caseworker will contact you within 72 hours to schedule an initial assessment. Please ensure you are available for this mandatory interview, *. Mom, I whispered, turning the laptop toward her. Someone called Child Protective Services. Her face went pale as she read. Sarah, who would? Melissa wouldn't go that far, would she? Before I could answer, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. Mrs. Walsh? This is Janet Morrison from CPS. I apologize for the short notice, but due to the nature of the report we received, I need to conduct a welfare check today rather than waiting for the standard 72-hour window. Her voice was professional but not unkind. Are you available this afternoon? What kind of report? I managed to ask, even as my world tilted sideways. I can discuss the specifics when I arrive, but the concerns involve potential postpartum mental health issues affecting your ability to safely care for your infant. The reporting party provided documentation of erratic behavior and family concerns about the child's welfare. Emma chose that moment to wake up fully, stretching her tiny arms and looking around with bright, alert eyes. She was perfect, healthy, well-fed, clearly thriving. The idea that anyone could look at her and think she was in danger felt surreal. Mrs. Walsh? Are you still there? Yes, I'm here. What time? 2:30, if that works. And Mrs. Walsh? This is just a standard assessment. Please don't panic. We're here to help families, not separate them. After she hung up, I sat in stunned silence while Emma gurgled happily in her bouncer, completely oblivious to the fact that a stranger would be coming to determine if she was safe with her own mother. Mom was already on her phone, dialing furiously. Amy? It's Mom. We have a problem. A big one. As I listened to her explain the situation to my sister, one thought kept repeating in my mind, Melissa had just declared war. And I was finally ready to fight back. The CPS caseworker arrived at exactly 2:30 p.m., just as I was finishing Emma's feeding. Janet Morrison was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes and a professional demeanor that put me slightly at ease. Thank you for accommodating the short notice, she said, settling onto our couch with a tablet and clipboard. I know this can be stressful, but I want you to know that most of these calls result in case closures within a few days. Emma was alert and content in my arms, tracking movement with her bright eyes. Janet smiled at her before opening her tablet. The report came from someone identifying herself as the child's paternal aunt, Melissa Walsh. She provided quite detailed documentation, photos, timestamps, even an audio recording. Janet scrolled through her notes. However, I have to tell you, some of the claims seem inconsistent. My heart jumped. Inconsistent how? Well, for starters, she submitted a photo allegedly showing an improperly installed car seat as evidence of neglect. But our car seat technician reviewed it and said the setup she photographed would be physically impossible to create accidentally. Someone would have had to deliberately dismantle it. I felt the first spark of hope I'd had in days. What else? The audio recording she provided as evidence of your mental state shows clear signs of digital manipulation. Voice clips spliced together, artificial pauses, background noise that doesn't match. Janet looked up from her tablet. Mrs. Walsh, has your sister-in-law been creating false evidence against you? Before I could answer, my phone exploded with notifications. Text after text, all from different numbers I didn't recognize. Sarah, this is Chloe, Melissa's friend. She asked me to create fake screenshots of concerning texts from you. I refused and she got angry. I have the messages where she asked me to lie, Hi, this is David's wife Jennifer. Melissa just called asking me to say I witnessed you having a breakdown at a family dinner that never happened. Something's very wrong here, Sarah, it's Dr. Martinez's nurse, Lisa. Melissa Walsh has called our office 6 times trying to get information about Emma's medical records. We've been documenting her attempts, My phone kept buzzing. Message after message from people who had apparently decided to come forward all at once. Janet noticed my expression. Everything okay? I handed her my phone, watching her eyebrows rise as she read through the incoming messages. Mrs. Walsh, how many people has your sister-in-law contacted about your family? I'm starting to think it was everyone, I said quietly. My front door opened, and Jake walked in, home hours earlier than expected. Behind him was my sister Amy, and behind her was someone I didn't recognize, a woman in her 40s carrying a briefcase. Sarah, Jake said, his face pale but determined. We need to talk. All of us. Amy stepped forward. This is Rachel Kim, a family attorney specializing in harassment cases. I called her after Mom told me about the CPS report. Janet looked between all of us. Mr. Walsh, I'm Janet Morrison from Child Protective Services. I was just telling your wife that the report we received appears to contain fabricated evidence. Jake's face went white. Fabricated how? Rachel opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Jake, I spent the morning investigating your sister's claims. She's been running a systematic harassment campaign against Sarah for weeks. Fake social media posts, manipulated recordings, false reports to medical professionals. She handed him a stack of papers. This is documentation from 14 different people she contacted, asking them to lie about Sarah's behavior or provide false witness statements. Jake stared at the papers like they might burst into flames. 14 people? Including your coworkers, Sarah's boss, your neighbors, and multiple family members, Rachel continued. She even tried to bribe your mail carrier to report that Sarah seemed unstable during package deliveries. Emma made a happy gurgling sound and reached for Jake's face as he sat down heavily beside me. His hands shook as he flipped through the documentation. The most concerning part, Janet added, is that making false reports to CPS is a felony. Creating fake evidence of child abuse or neglect carries serious criminal charges. My phone rang. Patricia's name flashed on the screen. Jake answered it, putting it on speaker. Mom? Jake, thank God. Is Sarah there? We need to. Patricia's voice was shaky, tearful. Melissa's been lying to us. About everything. She just confessed. The room went dead silent except for Emma's contented baby sounds. She's here at my house, completely hysterical. She said she made up the voicemail, faked the screenshots, even paid someone to create fake text message threads. Patricia was crying openly now. She said she was trying to protect Emma from what she called Sarah's overprotective parenting, but it spiraled out of control. Jake's grip on my hand tightened. Where is she now? I called the police, Jake. I had to. She admitted to filing a false CPS report, breaking into your house, destroying Sarah's breast milk. Jake, she's been documenting everything she did like some kind of project. Rachel and Janet exchanged glances. Mrs. Walsh, Janet said, we'll need your sister-in-law to come in for questioning. Making false reports about child welfare is something we take very seriously. 2 hours later, after Janet closed the case and left, after Rachel explained the restraining order process, after Patricia came over to apologize while crying harder than I'd ever seen her cry, Jake and I sat in our quiet living room with Emma sleeping peacefully between us. I'm so sorry, Jake said for the 10th time. I should have trusted you. I should have seen what she was doing. I looked down at Emma's perfect sleeping face, then at my husband's devastated expression. Jake, she fooled everyone. Even me, sometimes. My phone buzzed with one final text message. This one was from Melissa, sent from the police station, *, I'm sorry. I thought I was helping. I never meant for it to go this far, *. Jake read it over my shoulder and shook his head. She meant for it to go exactly this far. The question is why. We found out why 3 days later, when Patricia brought over a box of items from Melissa's apartment. Buried among notebooks and printed emails was a folder labeled Emma's safety plan. Inside were detailed plans for getting temporary custody of Emma, research on grandparents' rights, and a timeline for building a case against me that stretched back to before Emma was even born. At the bottom of the folder was a handwritten note, every baby deserves a mother who puts them first. Sometimes that means making hard choices. Melissa had genuinely believed she was saving Emma from me. The restraining order was granted the following week. Melissa was charged with filing false police reports, harassment, and attempted fraud. She pleaded guilty to avoid jail time but was sentenced to community service and mandatory counseling. 3 months later, Emma took her first steps in our living room while Jake and I cheered from the couch. She toddled toward me with that determined expression she'd inherited from both sides of the family, completely unaware that she'd once been at the center of someone else's twisted rescue fantasy. My phone sat silent on the coffee table, no mysterious calls, no manipulated messages, no false emergencies. Just the sound of our daughter's laughter and the absolute certainty that I'd been right to trust my instincts all along. Sometimes protecting your family means recognizing the danger isn't coming from outside your home. Sometimes it's coming from someone who claims to love you most.